Okay, so this video is going to cover Git, which is a version control system that we can use to keep all of our code on the cloud, code on the cloud. So we're going to cover Git in this video. And Git, like I already mentioned, is a distributed version control system. So what does it mean to be distributed? Essentially, that's a fancy word for saying there's a lot of different Git repositories all over the globe, so that's what it means by distributed. So if any of them are ever down, if any of the repositories are ever down, you can still get your code from another one. So just because one or two of them might be down for a second or offline, it's distributed, so your files are still there somewhere. So that's what it means to be a distributed version control system. So let me exit out of this PowerPoint slide. Okay, so anyone that was watching my last video on Visual Studio Code saw that I made this folder here called Core Apps, and inside of this Core Apps I have my MVC application. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to delete all of this. So that's gone. So now this is empty. So I'm going to leave Core Apps there. And what I'm going to do, yep, you're telling me you're not there anymore, is I'm going to go to Azure Repos. Azure Repos. Okay, so now that should bring us to Azure's website. I'm going to sign in, so you should be able to sign into Azure with your 6+2. And it looks like I already signed in. So I'm cached in there. There's my username, there's my 6+2, and my Microsoft account. And now here's Azure Repos. So I should be able to go to my Azure Repos. Okay, so it's under Products. So if we hover over Products, we can go to DevOps, which is essentially developer operations. And then from there, under DevOps, we can go to Azure Repos. And I believe I already have some repositories here. I don't see any. So let me click Start Free. Okay, yeah, here's my instance of Azure Repos. So I thought I already did it once. So here's a Python repository that I made. So I'm going to go ahead and make a new project. And it's going to be called MVC Git Example. So you can go ahead and make a description, whether or not it's going to be public or private. Do you want to be able to share it? You want this Git repo to be public, or maybe only you can see it or the people you share it with. There's also other settings you can use. Do you want it to be under Git? Team Foundation Server is essentially a version control system distributed by Microsoft, but I'm going to keep it under Git. And I was going to keep it under Basic. We're not doing any sort of process here, but if we're doing some sort of methodology, we could be using Scrum or Agile or something like that. I'm just going to keep it as basic, since I just want a basic Git repository for this. So I'm going to click Create. And then it'll take a second to create my repository. And essentially all this is just a bucket on Azure Repos to put my code in. So now I have this bucket for me to put my code in. Then it asks what you'd like to do. You can do a lot of stuff with Azure Repos. You can create a pipeline, so maybe you want to deploy your code out somewhere, have some tests. What artifacts would you like to use? But I'm not going to do anything with this quite yet. You can go to repos here and exactly figure out who has pushed codes or committed code to your repository. And then you can also clone to your computer, which is what I want to do. So I want to copy, or you can clone this straight into Visual Studio Code. So I'm just going to click copy. and then I'm going to go to Visual Studio Code. So remember, to open a project in Visual Studio Code, what we have to do is I'm going to go to Run, type CMD, and bring up my command prompt again. And notice I'm here in this user's my 6+2 again. I'm going to type directory or dir, and it's going to bring me to all the directories that I can choose from, and I want to choose that core apps again. So I'm going to cd into core apps. And notice I deleted everything out of here, so it's just a blank directory. So I want to go ahead and open this blank directory in code. So I'm going to type in code space period and hit enter. Other ways you can do this if you don't want to go through the command line, you can probably do it after the fact, but I might need to go into settings. What you can actually do is you can tell Visual Studio Code to allow you to choose open in Visual Studio Code whenever you're here. But essentially, if we go to Core Apps and right click, you'll see this option open in Visual Studio. When you're going through the installer for VS Code, you can choose an option that says allow me to open in Visual Studio Code from the Windows Explorer. So if you choose that radio button or checkbox, you should have an option here to open in Visual Studio Code if you don't want to go through the command prompt, if you don't like doing the command line interface. But coming back here, we're at an empty, nothing is here, it's empty. And our Azure repo is empty, so they're both empty. And what I want to do is register my Git repository with this empty space here. So what I can do is, let's see, I can open a new terminal. So a terminal essentially in Visual Studio Code is anything that I want to do with the CLI. And there's multiple multiple command lines that I can use here. So if you look here, it says PowerShell. So, but anything that we have that we can use as a command line, so in our case, Git or the .NET CLI, we can use here in the terminal. So to clone a Git repository, what I want to do is type in Git. So just like .NET, Git is the keyword that we want to use the Git CLI. And I want to git clone, so I want to clone that repository that I have. And I want to paste my repository. So notice it's my MVC Git example. I can hit enter, and it's going to clone it here. And it says, warning, you have appeared to clone an empty repository. Yep, that's fine, that's what I did. And if we go to verify that it worked, we can go here, go to Core Apps, and notice there's a Git folder now. So now this Git folder, it's actually a hidden folder, so you'll have to go into your file options and actually tell it to view hidden folders. So if you click View and have hidden items checked, or uncheck it, but notice if you uncheck it, it goes away because this is hidden. So the Git folder is going to be hidden from you. So you can do this one of two ways. You can clone a blank Git repository from Azure repos, or you can do it the other direction and start with the Git repository or this Git on your local machine and then push the Git repository to Azure repos. I think this is the easier way to do it because you can copy and paste your Git clone information. So if we come back here, now we have this blank Git repository. So now I can come here and in Core Apps, I can make a new .NET new MVC application. So let's go ahead and hit enter. And it should give us all of those wonderful files and folders for our new MVC application. Restore succeeded. It looks like it's still working a little bit. Let's give it a few more seconds. It might ask me to restore here in a second. Okay, while that's working, I'll show you a couple things that tells me I'm on the right track. If we look in the bottom left here, you'll see that I'm on the master branch. So whenever we work with Git, we can branch. So there's a master, which is essentially the most up-to-date, best code. And then you can branch from there if multiple people are working on the same code base. So you can make a develop branch and push to your develop branch so you're not messing with master all the time, and then essentially merge those two branches together. And then it'll take differences between all the files and merge them to the best of its ability. And then maybe if it doesn't quite understand how to merge two files together, you might have to help it out a little bit. But as the course goes along, we'll do a little bit of merging into Git. So that'll make more sense later. So don't kick yourself too much about merging or any of the other Git operations. Now we have this repository. Let's go back to our file explorer again. I might need to, there's my Git example. I might have put this in the wrong place. So you might do this a few times. Let's start over. Let's delete all of this. Continue. It probably doesn't like that Visual Studio Code is open. Let's close this, try again. Okay, let's go through this one more time. It actually created that folder for me, and I should have put my code inside that folder. So you live and you learn. Let's try this again. Let's clone. Let's see here. Let's open run again, cmd. I think we need to go into core apps. Let's run this in code. All right, so now we're here again. Let's give it a second. Looks like everything's loaded. Okay, let's go back to our terminal. Git clone. Let's clone that repository again. It's probably going to tell me that it's empty, because it is. Okay, so now I should have that Git location. And I actually want to put my MVC inside of this folder. So let's go ahead and change directories to that MVC Git example folder. MVC Git example. Okay, so now I changed directories into there. And then let's go ahead and say .NET new MVC in this folder, since that's where our Git folders are. So it looks like that worked. And you can tell it works, so we're still on branch master down here on the left-hand side of the screen. And then you can actually see that this turned green. So what that means is this is all building, for one. So this is all building. And these have all been modified and updated for our Git repository. And we can actually come here to our source control explorer and see that all of these are marked dirty and ready to be checked into our Git repository. Here's all of our changes. We have 56 changes. So we had a blank repository, and now we have a repository that is an MVC application. So there's always two steps in pushing your repository. The first thing you need to do is stage all of your changes and give it a message. So I'm going to say initial push. I want to stage all my changes. And now notice it says your stage changes are all of these. So now I'm going to go ahead and collapse this to make sure I don't have any non-staged changes. And then I can actually come here to the top and commit to that Git repository. And you'll notice that I no longer have any more changes. And you'll come back here, and it's no longer green. So it's actually just the gray again. You don't have anything that's green. If I go to the startup CS and change just this file and click save, and it looks like it wants to build my assets now, so let's go ahead and let it build. Okay. Let's go ahead and do a, okay, yep, there it went. So you can see that I modified now this file, and if I go here, on top of all the object files that it made, you can see that I modified this startup file, and you can see the changes that I made to it. You can see the changes that I made to the file for when I check it in. So you can cherry pick only this file to check in. So I'm going to say I checked in this file. I'm going to stage that change, and I'm going to say got rid of some comments. I'm going to commit. So that just commits it to my local. That's all it does. So now that's in my file system. Now I want to tell it to push all of the stuff that's on my file system to my Git repository. Let's go ahead and push. Now it's telling you, would you like code to periodically run git fetch, which is essentially saying, if anybody has made any changes to my repository, I want to be able to know that and have Git run out and fetch those changes for me before I start doing any active development, just in case my teammates have made some changes for me that I don't need to do anymore, or maybe they made changes that might break what I'm doing. So I'm going to go ahead and tell it yes, that I want to allow it to do that. And now if I go back to my Azure repos, I should see all of the files that I just pushed up here to the cloud. So here's all of my MVC files that I've now pushed to the cloud, and I can make changes to it as I want, and now it's no longer on my local machine other than just what I have in the Git folder. So if I make any changes, it's all here. If I ever lose a laptop or lose a hard drive, it's all here for me. I can have other people look at the code I've done. I can have employers look at the code I've done. I can send them a URL to my code, and all kinds of cool things that you can do with Git in Azure repos. So I hope this video is helpful. I hope you use Git and Azure repos to keep all of your assignments. It's very good to learn and to talk about with your employers or possible co-ops, because it's very, very, very widely used in the industry. I don't think nobody in the industry doesn't use a version control system to keep their code. So we'll continue to use Azure repos as the course goes along, and I'll see if I can fit in any of the other cool things that we can do on Azure at the same time. So I hope this video was helpful. Let me know, and as always, shoot me an email or a message if you have any questions. All right, thanks. Have a good week.